such tremendous vulnerability and just sharing and just opening up. And it made me want to open up about something that I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to talk about this. And I don't know if I can get through it if I do start talking about it. Okay. I want to say one thing before I get started with this. Though Mazarene and I were having a conversation before this all got started, and she was telling me about, what she was talking about. And I was just listening, and I was thinking, yeah, that just dovetails so well with what else I'm going to share as we get to this. But what I was struggling with is listening to the stories. I have a sister. I have two sisters. And one of my sisters was a Marine. And, growing up with my sisters, I had a different, when I hear stories about how men treat women and how they think about women and how they, and all these types of things, I just always think about my sisters. And because I grew up with them, I just saw them as people. I didn't see them as girls or my sisters or somebody I had to protect. They just weren't like that. And one of my sisters, the one who was a Marine, she was out there. She was tough. And I told the story. I said, when she was, I don't know, she was probably in high school or whatever. And no, she couldn't have been in high school. She must have been a little bit younger. But she said to me, "You can't hurt me." And so I hit her in the shoulder. Pow. And she was like, "That didn't hurt." So I go, "Okay." Pow. She goes, "That didn't hurt." So I gave her a little good one, right? Pow. And she stood there for a second and she looked at me. And I thought tears were about to come out of her eyes. And she looked at me and she said, "That didn't hurt." So that's how she was. But my other sister was kind of on the girl side. She did girl stuff, right? But what I wanted to say is that, so this is what I grew up with. And as I'm listening to your stories and I'm thinking about my sisters and who they are and how and the things that they've done and the tremendous successes that they've had, even through the challenges that they faced, that really just touched me. But my sister, who is a Marine, went through some struggles. And as I was hearing about the Feng Shui, this is one of the ways that she controlled her environment. She had PTSD. She had, a lot of challenges from her time in the Marines. She was deployed. I was a combat aviator, and I remember being in B-52 flying over Iraq and Kuwait, and knowing that my sister was down there on the ground. She was with a medical battalion. And so she had created this environment for herself so that she could control these things, so that she could deal with all these things. And she was a fighter. And she was fighting the VA for support for veterans. And she was into all these things, very political, very smart. And in March, she lived in North Carolina in March. She was having some battles with her homeowners association, and the police came in, like 7 sheriffs from what I understand, and they pulled her out of her house. So she lived in Charlotte. My other sister lived in Fort Mill. So she went to talk to my other sister, and she had pets. So my other sister lives in a small, condo. And so she says, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll get you a hotel room so that you can have a pet-friendly hotel room, so you can have your pets with you. We'll start working on this thing, and then, we'll handle it. We'll take care of it." And so she put her in the hotel with the pets. And then my sister had 2 sons, so they were trying to call her and trying to get in touch with her. And she called me, and I'd spoken to her, and we were talking about some of the things that she was dealing with at the moment. And I pulled up my phone when I was watching this because we talked, and then my wife and I have new grandsons. We have 2 grandsons. And so I was telling her about the grandson, and I sent her a little video of our grandson. And a couple of days later, we found out that she committed suicide. And it's like, I just spoke with her. I didn't know all of these things were going on and what's happening. And so as we are, as a family, are trying to process this, my other sister, and she was really having a hard time because she had 1 sister, we had 2. and now her one sister is not there anymore. She was telling us about this space that my sister Terry had created in her house, and when they pulled her out of the apartment, out of the home, they didn't even let her take her medication with her. So now she's in the hotel room. She doesn't have her medication, and these things, and these things are going on. And so it really hit all of us very hard because she was such a strong-minded person. And we're talking about therapy, and that's another reason why this came up, is because now two of my brothers and my sister have all started therapy just to deal with this. But it really shook all of us because we just could not imagine that this would occur. And you always ask yourself, could we have been more diligent? Should we have said more? I spoke to her a day. Well, we don't really know because it was like 3 days of trying to get in touch with her, knowing that she was in the hotel, knocking on the door, the whole thing. And so could we have said anything differently, done anything different? We just didn't know. And so I just felt like I was supposed to say that. I definitely want to say that to honor her, to share something, about her, because she was a strong, very powerful person. So I just felt like I was supposed to talk about that. So, yes. Yeah, and that was just in March. So that was just this past March. And you hear about all the statistics, and I don't want her to be one of those. She's more than that. But we know that that's what happens. Okay, so where do we go from here? So after hearing all of these, there were so many different things I connected with. I connected with the basketball. I connected with the acronyms. I connected with the journey that it just evolves and unfolds in front of you, and all these different kinds of things. And so what I wanted to do was to talk about this from the perspective of a transformation in thinking. And for some of you, it will be a transformation in thinking. But for some of you, it will be a validation that the way you've been thinking has gotten you on the right track. And so what I'm going to share are things that I learned through blood, sweat, tears. There are no easy steps in business. And so this is not some 5 easy steps to making $1 million in 6 months. It just doesn't exist. And the key for me has been this concept of strategic thinking. And I see things out there where people say, you have to think strategically. But what does that mean? What does it mean? I know in the military we think strategically very well because that's our lifeblood, is thinking strategically. But give me a sense of what do you think strategic thinking is? Anybody? What is strategy? What is strategic thinking all about? And if you know, you know. I just want to share. Exactly, looking out to the future, that sort of thing. But what I found in my journey, so I'm going to start where I retired from the military, and I made a decision that I did not want to work for anybody ever, 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 ever again. And I didn't know what that meant. I just, my experience had been such that I wanted to control my own decisions and not have anybody tell me no. I wanted to make money based upon my skills, talents, and abilities so that it would be unlimited and nobody could put a cap on how much money I could make. I wanted freedom. I wanted autonomy. I wanted control of my time. All of these things I wanted when I retired from the military. And so I tried a few different things. I tried to go into trading options and investing and stuff like that. And I said, hey, because I'm an introvert. Somebody said, I'm an introvert. And I'm happy in my cave. And I can stay there all day long. And the idea of sitting on my computer and trading options all day long was very appealing to me. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to go out, go get a snack and come back and make money. Woo, big money. But I knew how challenging that was, so I gave myself a goal. I had $10,000. I said, if I can turn this $10,000 into $100,000, then this will be a path for me. Well, I very rapidly turned that $10,000 into zero, so my decision was made. That's not where I'm going. And then I tried a couple of other things, and it became clear after a moment that becoming an entrepreneur was the most controllable way for me to be able to move forward. And again, I didn't know really what that meant. I knew that meant being an entrepreneur. The other side of the coin is I could go get a corporate job, and either one of them would have been very difficult. Just like Karen mentioned, a year, and you're doing interviews, and you're going, and I said, if I go that path and I do get a job, then they can fire me on a whim. And I don't want to be that. For me, that was not security. So becoming an entrepreneur, the only person who could fire me would be me. And I'm a very generous and understanding boss. So that took me into this path of an unknown. And when I started down this path, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but that's it. That's all I knew. And so I started taking classes, small business administration, small business development center, SCORE, talking to all these people, expecting that there would be some strategic framework that would help me think about what I was about to do. Not give me steps, not give me a checklist, not tell me what I needed to do, but just give me a way of thinking about it. And it didn't exist. It didn't exist. I knew it was possible because we'd been doing it in the military for years. We don't have a choice in the military to not get our job done because national security is at stake. So why could we do it in the military? And then I realized they do it at the corporate level. Bain and BCG and Deloitte, they all charge these companies millions of dollars to help them come in and create these strategies. So why can't we do it as a small business owner? People have been running small businesses for years, millennia. So why doesn't this exist for small business? So I quickly realized that if I was going to do that, then I was going to have to create it and figure this out. And here, by the way, nobody wants to work with the small business owner in what I now call a pre-profitability stage. Why? Does anybody know? Risk. What's another reason why you would not want to work with somebody in the pre-profitability stage? They have no money. You can't figure out a way to build a business to make money helping people who have no money. And so I felt very secure in going down this path. Now, I was fortunate to have retired. I retired as an 06 in 2009. So I had that retirement pay. I have my lovely wife who supports me. I am a kept man. And we have 4 sons, but they're grown. They're out on their own. They're not at home. As a matter of fact, our youngest one turned 28 today. So I had that latitude to go down this path with full ability to serve the mission and not primarily the money. But money is near and dear to my heart. It's very important to me. And I wanted to make a lot of it. And she'll tell you what a lot is. So to get started on the journey about strategic thinking, I was in Texas several years ago. And a guy named George Fraser, you probably know, a few people know George Fraser, and he had this conference and I attended. And there was a lady on the stage who said, she interviewed 8 billionaires, and unbeknownst to them all, and she asked them what was the framework behind their success. I hate using the word secret of success because there's no secrets of success, but what was the framework? What was the foundation? What did they do? And she said they told her that it was organized people and organized money. Yeah, I like that because I love organization. So that's like near and dear to my heart. So I was like, that's great. The only problem was I had no people and I had no money. So you can't organize something that you don't have. So that started me on this other path again of, okay, I have no people, I have no money, so I can't really do that yet. What do I have? And so what I did have is I had strategic thinking. I'd always been a strategic thinker ever since I grew up. I actually didn't figure that out until I was about, 53 years old, something like that. When I finally began to figure it out. And that goes back to, again, what Mazarine was talking about, which is what are your gifts? And how do you figure out what your gifts are and what your talents are? And we often look away from our gifts and talents because we go, that's so easy. Anybody can do that. That's not important. Nobody needs that. When that's exactly what everybody needs, and you should be turning towards that because that's where you need to go. So once I realized that I had this strategic thinking thing. I was in BNI, Business Network International. I had a leather restoration and vinyl repair business. That was causing some people some cognitive dissonance. Wait a minute, you were retired 06 and you're like fixing people's stuff? What do you know about leather restoration and vinyl repair? What they didn't realize is that I was learning to be a CEO. And I met these people. I was the vice president in BNI my second year, which meant that I was responsible for tracking the money that people were making in the chapter. And while we were saying that we went from $640,000 in thank you for closed business to $1.4 million in thank you for closed business, it was mostly confined within the attorneys and the tradespeople. So all of these other business owners were not generating a whole lot of money into their businesses. And that became an obsession for me. That became a passion for me. And I said, how do I figure this thing out? And that's what set me on my path and got me on the journey. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bust some myths. I'm going to ruin some worlds. I'm going to shatter some ideas. And we teach what we've been taught. And I brought this magazine with me because this is the Florida Small Business 2020. And in here they talk about how you start a business. And so give me a sense of what's the first thing you do when you start a business? What do you think is the first thing you do when you start a business? You do some research. Any other ideas? Tell people. Business plan, love it. EIN. You do what? Spend a lot of money. That's right. That's right. So the first myth I'm going to bust does have to do with the EIN, and it is, and it says so in this magazine. It says, set yourself up as a business entity. You know, either an LLC or an S corporation. I mean, I'm not kidding. Task 1, choose a business structure. Task 2, choose a name. Task 3, choose a location. Task 4, apply for an EIN. Task 5, know what taxes you'll need to pay. So when you set yourself up as a business entity, you're not in business. You're not in business at all. You have a business entity, but you are not a business enterprise. It's going to cost you money to set up that structure, and it's going to cost you money to maintain that. So right from day one, you're spending money. Money is going out the door. Well, this is about power your profitability with strategic thinking. Profitability. So if money's going out the door, how much longer is it going to take you to get enough money in the door so you have profitability? So the second myth that I'm going to bust has to do with spending money to make money. Everybody tells you, how many of you have heard that? You have to spend money to make money. So if you're trying to go after profitability and you're spending money, how long is it going to take you to achieve profitability? Now, this is one of those things that I can see the wheels turning. Well, I need a website. I need business cards. I need people. I need marketing. I need all these things, and all of these things cost money. And if I don't do all these things, then how am I going to make money? We're going to talk about that. And then the third myth I'm going to bust is let me put it this way. I'm going to start from what it is. And you're in business to make money. You're in business to make money. And the first time I heard somebody from the stage say that, and I was sitting there, and I said, I'm not in business to make money. I'm in business to make a difference. And if I help enough people, then what's going to happen? The money's going to take care of itself. If I help enough people, the money's going to take care of itself.
That's not true.
Now, hard-headed as I am, it took me a couple of years to figure out that's not true. So I sing a different tune now. My rule number 1 is you are in business to make money. That's right. So those are the 3 myths. So let's talk about how this all comes together. So the way it comes together in the beginning is the definition of strategy. As business owners, it's complicated, it's complex, there's so many moving parts. You can't figure out what to do on any daily basis. So things have to be simple to be applied. And so all of the definitions that I use are simple so that you can focus on application and not have to focus on understanding. So the definition I use is how to get from where you are to where you want to be. So it goes back to what you said, Nirka. What is your desired outcome? And so there's 3 components to that definition. Where are you? Where do you want to be? And how do you connect the dots? And 80% of the business owners that I work with, when they start, they haven't given any thought to where they want to be. I was fortunate when I retired from the military to have a where I wanted to be, which was I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then there were reasons below that. So that's the definition for strategy. So now when we start talking about how do we execute, so we're going to flip in the other direction what I spoke about as the traditional being business structure, business plan, find some customers and clients. We're going to flip that because the way you can use strategic thinking to better lead to profitability is the first thing you need to do is focus on how you're going to make money. And I read a book by a guy named Michael Masterson called Ready, Fire, Aim, and he planted that seed in my brain. He said, before you start doing anything in business, sell something. And if you find that you can't sell anything or sell what it is that you expect to be able to sell to people, stop, do not pass go, because you will not collect $200. And when you focus first on how you are going to generate money into your company, then you can have the resources that give you choices and allow you to pay other people to do those things for you that you need, such as build your website, do your social media, do your marketing. But if you're paying people to do that and you haven't yet figured out how you're making money, there's money going out the door and there's no money coming in. And you don't know when the money's going to start coming in. So that's that's how we flip this with strategic thinking. So I came up with this business model formula, and I have to say this. Over this journey, I have come up with some incredible things through trial and error, through pain, through blood, sweat, and tears, only to read a book and find out that somebody else had thought about it before me. It's frustrating. But it's a wonderful part of the journey too, because what I look at it as a validator. I said, well, I came to that by my trial and error because I don't know if I'd read that book 10 years ago, whether or not I would have actually applied it. But because I paid the pain price, it just made sense to me. And so that was great. So the business model formula is how your business earns money. And the formula is most profitable product plus your most profitable customer equals a revenue generating activity. Now, if you do nothing else, if you do absolutely nothing else, and you focus on your most profitable product, what do you do? What problem do you solve with a solution that people are willing to pay for and that you've packaged in a way with a price that makes sense for both you and for them? If you just spend all your time working on that, you're going to start to get the answers because it's what I call self-fulfilling prophecy. And when you focus on the customers, and I loved what G.I. said when she was up here, my customer focus is very narrow. And she laid it out. We call that an avatar or a persona. If you start talking to the marketing people, that's what they call it. So when you know precisely who buys from you and why, you can better prepare and improve your solutions to meet their needs. It's what's in it for them. This was a big lesson I learned. When I retired and I said I wanted all those things that I listed out, freedom and all that kind of things, what I learned very quickly is nobody was going to pay me for that. So if I wasn't solving somebody else's problem, I wasn't going to make a dime. So I had to figure that part out. So if you do nothing else, if you take nothing else away from this presentation, I want you to take away two things. One is strategy is how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And there's three parts to it. So whenever you have a challenge and whenever you feel anxious, overwhelmed, uncertain, ask yourself, where do I want to be? What do I want this to look like at the end? And then you can say, well, where am I? And you can start connecting the dots with knowns. These are things that I know. And then you'll be able to see the things that you don't know. And then you'll be able to talk to other people and they can look at your map and they can say, oh, well, between here and here, you need to do this. Or you can say, well, you can't do that before you do that, so you need to move this over here. And then you can start having those kind of communication conversations. Very powerful. Very, very powerful. One of my clients was merging two companies. And he used the milestone map process to merge the two companies. And he said it was absolutely amazing because everybody was engaged. You know, they could see what was, they could see what wasn't, and they could make contributions based upon what they knew. And he was just absolutely blown away by it. So that's the business model formula. The next step is business development. Now, business development is commonly known as what? As what? Sales. Yeah, business development is commonly known as sales, and that's exactly what this is. What many business owners do is they say, I hate to sell, I don't want to sell, I don't like to sell, and I am one of those. I did some business development work, and I absolutely hated it. I was no good at it. Now, my wife is in business development. She's a sales manager for a major company, and she loves it. She can sell other people's products because that's what we call traditional sales. As long as that product has value so that she knows that the promises she makes are going to be kept by the company, then she could go and she can sell. And she's motivated by the bonuses. She's motivated by, hitting those quotas and all those types of things. Motivated by the money. Well, we've been together for about 38 years. So that's traditional sales, and most of us do not want to be involved in that. I'm going to tell you this is going to make you happy. You don't have to. You do not have to be involved in traditional sales to grow your business and be successful. But you do have to engage in selling. So what is selling? I guarantee that all of you have been to a movie that you loved and bought a ticket to go to the movies. Anybody who has not? Everybody has, right? You bought a ticket, you went to a movie, you loved the movie. How many of you went and told a good friend about that movie, and that good friend went to the theater, bought a ticket, and watched the movie? You just sold a movie ticket. Now, when you start feeling the same way about your business as you do about that movie, that's when you're going to be able to sell, and it's going to feel natural, it's going to feel authentic, and it's actually going to be fun. And that's what I do, and I love it. I was on a call a couple of days ago, and I have an office, and then there's a guy who has an office next to me. And I was on a call with somebody, and we were talking about what he wanted to accomplish, and I was describing how I could help him accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, and he became a client of mine. So I got up, and I went next door, and this guy has a salesperson that he hired, and the salesperson's name is Mike. I walked to the next door, and I said, I'm a better salesperson than Mike. Mike's a professional, but I'm better. It's fun because it's authentic and it's genuine. So that's selling. And start thinking about selling in those terms, and it'll be a whole lot better. Right, And it was great because as we were having this conversation, that's what I was getting back. He was like, wow, this is amazing. You're getting back all this positive energy because it's about him. It's not about my money. It's not about my business. It's not about what I'm trying to sell. It's about helping them achieve what they want. But you do have to have a written sales process. No matter whether you're a professional salesperson or not, you need to write it down. Written sales processes have many steps. I've seen 14, 15-step sales processes. And what I did is I said, again, with the idea of keeping it simple, because for a small business owner with a ton of things to do, it cannot be complicated. So the written sales process I came up with is just simply 4 steps. Client attraction. How do you get the attention of the decision maker? If you're not getting the attention of the decision maker, you're never going to get someone who is authorized to make the purchase. Some of these sales can be incredibly complicated because there's not one decision maker. There may be 2, 3, or 4 other agencies that have to weigh in on that decision. And if that's the case, then you have to figure out, well, how am I going to do that? What does the sales cycle look like? And then that's what's going to give you control. Strategy again. How do I get from where I am to where I want to be? Okay, I want to be here. I want this company as a client. You study them, you learn about them, you figure out, and then you connect the dots from where you are to where you want to be. Who do you know in that company? What do you know about that company? Now you're being very purposeful and intentional about the actions that you're taking. So the beauty about, so then client attraction, the next one is education. How do you describe to them how you're going to help them solve their problem? Then the next part is, what is the offer? So many business owners fall down on this because I had a conversation with a guy. I was like, I love what you do. How can I get started? Just let me know how I can get started. And he was like, well, you can do this and you can do that. And he was telling me about it. And I said, yeah, I got that. Just tell me how I can get started. And he was like, well, I think we're going to have a webinar on Wednesday so you can go on the webinar. And at that point, I'm checked out. I'm like, no, it won't work for me. I don't know if he knows what he's doing. So if you can't make that offer right off the bat and say, this is what I do, and this is how much it's going to charge, how much I charge, and this, what you're going to get, you got to be ready to come up with that. And then the close is, how do you get paid? Do you believe that there are people out there who make it difficult for other people to pay them?
Yes.
And so it takes a little bit of thought in advance. And this again goes back to strategy. You're thinking these things through at ground zero so that when you get time in front of somebody, you can execute it and you can run it off. And that's why it's important to have it written, because as your company grows, eventually you're going to move away from the sales, even the fund selling approach, because somebody else is going to have to do it. Because if you're going to scale, you're not going to be able to have conversations with everybody who comes into your company. So now if you have this written sales process, when you hire your first salesperson, you can say, okay, this is the way I have been able to connect with people and get them to become clients. Then that professional salesperson can take it to the next higher level. And they can take it to the types of things that need to be done. So again, you need that to be able to scale and grow. Now we've focused in on how you are making money. If you've done those two things, you should be seeing a controllable revenue stream. And if you're not, guess what? Don't pass go, because you will not collect $200. At this point, you haven't spent a whole lot of money. You haven't created a whole lot of overhead yet. But when it comes to creating overhead, if you have demonstrated that you have a controllable revenue stream, because if that written sales process doesn't work, go back and figure out why it's not working. And if it doesn't ever work, do not pass go, because you won't collect $200. Now, when you have a business model formula that functions, and you have a written sales process that works, guess how easy it is to write a business plan? There's one thing that's certain about writing a business plan up front, before you've done everything else. There's one thing that's certain about it. It's wrong. Your projections are wrong. Your market research is wrong. It's wrong because it's all a guess. But once you have a functioning business model, now you have data that you can put into that plan, and it may not be completely wrong. It'll be a lot less wrong. And what is a business plan good for anyway? The purpose and intent of a business plan is to raise capital. So let's talk about that second myth. The second myth was you have to spend money to make money. Hopefully I just demonstrated to you that you don't have to spend money to make money. But guess what? There's a caveat to that. You do have to spend money to make more money. Once you figured out how to make money, then you know where to put your marketing dollars. Then you know how to hire people and when to hire people. Then you can pay somebody to do your website and set up your LLC. You can have an attorney. You can have an insurance person. You can have a banker. You can have an accountant. You can have all these people who are helping you make these decisions more effectively. So you may need to raise capital. If you're building a tech company, for example, you're not going to be able to sell whatever it is that tech company delivers up front because it doesn't exist. But you have to sell the idea. And you can do things on a very small scale to prove that your tech idea is going to work and get people to buy in. And then those are the things that you can then sell to an investor or use to convince a bank that they should back you. But if you haven't gone through the first step, it's going to be really tough. So raising capital is why you write the business plan. The bank wants to see it, investors want to see it, and they're going to judge it not on the merits of its success, but on the merits of you. Have you thought this through? And so here are some of the components of the business plan, and many of you are very familiar with these. It's about the mission. It's about the management, which is probably the most important thing that investors look at, is the management, because they know that an A team will take a mediocre product and make it a success, whereas a C team will take a tremendous idea and drive it into the ground. So they want to know about the management. They want to assess your market research. Have you really done good market research? And are your projections reasonable? Not perfect, but are they reasonable? And if they're way out of the ballpark, you're going to get dismissed. Yeah. So the business plan, now you do the business plan, and now you get to the last step, which is your business structure. So the implications of your business structure are only two: taxes and protection. So when you set up a business structure in the very beginning and you have no money, how are you going to take advantage of taxes? You don't have anything to pay taxes upon. So it's going to do so your business structure is not going to help you there. And if you have no assets, if your business has no assets, what are you protecting? I used to say long ago, I would love for somebody to steal my identity. Because if they steal my identity, they get on my credit cards and then they can pay the bills. That would fix them. So the business structure, and there are a bunch. But then you get into the business structure, and it is for those purposes. When you first start, you'll be a sole proprietor by default. You start a partnership. You want to make sure that you have some type of an operating agreement, because when things go wrong, and they will, you want to know and have thought out in advance what you're going to do about those things. LLC, and again, this is business, not legal. You want to talk to your accountant. You want to talk to your lawyer about these things. I'm just the guy on the stage. LLC is really the most flexible when you start, because you can choose how you want to be taxed, and you don't have all of the other types of board meetings and paperwork and all that stuff that comes along with being a corporation. So it's a little more flexible, again, keeping it simple for the solopreneur. That's one. S corporation and C corporation. If you're going to go after investment money, most of the time they want to see you as a corporation, because they do not want to be a member of your LLC. They just want to be able to get some shares that show how much ownership they have in your company. They want you to be registered in Delaware because that has the best case law for small businesses, blah, 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 all that stuff. And the B corporation is one that is recently come up, because a C corporation, a CEO, has a fiduciary responsibility to make money. And if that CEO decides to go do something social with the profits, as opposed to putting them back into the company to grow, they can actually be held accountable for that and maybe even go to jail. So the B corporation was formed so that CEOs can do social types of things with their company and succeed. So that is what I have for thinking strategically. Hopefully that's been helpful for somebody. Hopefully you've been able to have some good takeaways from that. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody completely 100% thoroughly disagree with what I said? If you do, I love it. Hey, thanks.
In your experience, the strategy thinking, do you think it's innate, or you can teach it?
I think it's innate. I think it's innate. I think you can teach people how to create strategies, like, use TikTok because it's going to do this for your business. But when I think about strategy for myself, it's this sense of, if I don't know what this is going to look like at some point in the future, I cannot take action today, because it makes no sense to me. And again, I mentioned being a B-52 navigator, and we had these formulas. So if we're 1 degree off at this point, in 10 minutes, we're going to be 60 miles off course. And that's what's in my head all the time. So for me, strategy is about progression. It's about direction. And if you don't have that direction, then you have no idea where you're going to end up. You have no idea when you're off course. You have no idea how to correct back if you are off course. And those things, that's the way my brain works. And the reason I say I think it's innate is because when I start having these conversations with people, their eyes roll back in their head, they're bored to death, they don't want to think about it, I don't care about systems, I don't want to know about processes. All of these things are not interesting to them. And so, can you teach? I can tell you strategy is how to get from where you want to where you want to be, and you can execute that. But does that make you a strategic thinker? My answer is no, I don't think so. I think I've just given you a tool that you can use to think strategically like me, but, Does that help? I mean, yeah, it's a gift. It is definitely a gift. And somebody, maybe a GI, when she was up and she mentioned, hey, go back and look at, us who are military, go back and look at all your performance reports. And go back and look. So when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after my leather restoration and vinyl repair business, that's what I did. And I noticed that there was strategy. I went on LinkedIn and I contacted as many of the people in military that I served with, and I said, hey, write me a recommendation. And about a few over 50 did come back and write me a recommendation. They said, well, what do you want me to write? I said, I don't know, write whatever you want to write. And so what did they keep saying? Russ is a strategic thinker. Russ is one of the best strategic thinkers I know. It kept coming back, strategy. And I knew how much I loved it when I was on active duty. So that really revealed to me what my gift was. And I started to focus on that. And then the question became, how do I apply it to a business? And that's where I made the linkage between that and then business owners in the pre-profitability stage. Because it hurt my heart to see people in the pre-profitability stage not able to realize their dreams.
Well, that really resonates with me because I see a lot of people who have an issue thinking. So, for example, Karen had mentioned, when the pandemic happened and women were having to change all their schedules. I get a lot of women who are like, okay, my husband just retired from the military. I'm now going to go start my career. But I don't know what skills I have because I've been a mom for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I joke a lot of times when I say, well, have you taken kids to practice and been on the phone and done this and, we got on this, yeah, I have. I go, okay, so you can multitask, and we go even to the point of joking, like, okay, well, if you change diapers, you can deal with biohazards, But I see a lot of times that gap where they don't know how to take those skills, like what you did, you went back and found them, and transition those into where they're at right now.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're doing is really important because there's that gap. Mm-hmm. There's people who just go out and start a business, mm-hmm. and then it just fails. Mm-hmm. It's a great idea, but they are clueless about business. Mm-hmm. Or you got someone who's really good with business, but they don't know how to make the money. Because I've met people who are like, oh, I've been in business for 20 years, and I'm in the negative every year. So I really like what you're saying. I think there's a great space there. Mm-hmm. And you're right, like when we go to even the small business, SBA, go look on there, it doesn't talk about this.
That's right.
It starts with what type of business is.
Exactly. They assume that you're already generating revenue some way, shape, or form. And so what I do is I actually help people to position themselves so that they can take advantage of what the SBA has to offer. If you're in business and you haven't been in business 2 years and you haven't generated any revenue, the SBA can't help you with an SBA loan because, you don't meet the criteria, and the bank's going to say no because you can't pay it back. But my wife had the same situation when I retired from the military. And I say we retired because, we retired from the military. She was with me the whole 27 years on active duty. And so she was saying, I've done this and this and this and this, but I haven't done anything, and I have nothing that I can really sell in terms of a career. But the conversation we had is I said, but in every one of those jobs, you did something that made you successful in every one of those jobs. There's something about you that made you able to succeed as a mortgage person, as a real estate agent, as a preschool teacher, as a high school teacher, as a Yeah, as a mom. But I mean, just from the standpoint of the outside of the home, jobs, the things that you did as a mom helped you be successful in these other things, right? All of it comes together. So what she did was take a look at it, and even from her personality, okay, this is my personality. But then what we realized is that personality translated into being able to persuade people to do things, which translated into something that she'd been doing ever since she was 15 years old, which was sales. It was like, hey, I do this. I love this. I like this. And so she was able to start on her career by going after those types of jobs. And she got hired, and you've been with the company now for 9 years. So it's about thinking it through. It's about what is it that you want to achieve, where are you now, and how do you connect those dots. And at the end of the day, if you just keep thinking about that in terms of every problem, it really does help you, because I even have to do it now. I get anxious, I get overwhelmed, I'm uncertain about some of the decisions, and so I just say, let me take a step back. Let me see where I want to be. How close am I? What has to happen? What am I going to do today? And it's a way of thinking, and that's the other thing I want to share is I'm not giving you a process. I'm trying to, as I started out, is a transformation in thinking, a transformation in the way you look at things. So that now, because my goal is, I want you to be in full creativity. And I have this thing I call structure without restriction. We'll put this structure in place, but the creativity is all up to you. We remove the guesswork, but we retain the creativity. Because that's what makes people excited, in my opinion, is being able to be creative and live their full, self.